Today we start the book of James, and it's interesting because I just got finished with Matthew, and here I am doing the New Testament. But like I said before in another video, I'm changing my way a little bit. I don't just want to go Matthew through Revelation. I did go through the Old Testament, Genesis, but I stopped with Nehemiah, and then I went back and got the minor prophets. Then I did the major prophets. So I broke it up a little bit for educational purposes also. I have this list, what I was going to show you. I've shown it before. This is a list that I created on the books of the Bible chronologically. Which one was written first, which one came into the church second, and so forth. And we will find that Christianity is a progressive revelation of understanding. It went over, of course, it went all the way to 94, so that's over 60 years from the death of Christ. Around 62 years is when Revelation came across. And so we have, in that span of time between 44 and 94, in that 50-year pattern, we had the books were written because the apostles were getting older and the needs of the church was something new. And this was also that average men that were not learned, men that hadn't been taught at the feet of someone else, they were taught only at the feet of Jesus, became the authority. We have here, of course, you'll see the book of James in 44. You'll see Galatians came out in around 49. Then came Mark and Matthew in 50. I did Matthew first only because I wanted to get a solid foundation of the gospel. I'm sure that every church had heard the gospel from the mouth of the apostles, and that includes the ones that did not write it down, like Andrew and Philip. They would have had this same gospel going along. Then I put Berea in there because we are supposed to search the scriptures daily and be more noble than the Bereans. Well, they only had 4 gospels and the entire Old Testament. We're supposed to read the Old Testament the same way we do the New. It's very important. In fact, that's the scriptures. We cannot guarantee that every church had a copy of these first 4 books. They probably got handed around. So the Bereans went to the Old Testament especially to see Christ. Then you had 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in 51. Then in 55 you had 1st and 2nd Corinthians. Romans came in 56. Luke was written around 60. So you have 10 years between the Gospels. You have all the letters of Ephesians, Colossians, Philippians, Acts, Timothy, 1st and 2nd, Titus, and all of these were written between 61. They were written in a 5-year period. Of course, you have Peter, Hebrews, Jude is 68. Then John in 1st and 2nd, 3rd John in 90, and Revelation in 94. So if we're going to do a progressive revelation of how you would learn the Bible, this would be the way. The idea I'd put forth before is, let's say that you were the same age of Jesus when he died. You were like, let's say 32, even the same age. So you would have read, if he died in 32, you would have read James when you were 44 years old. You would have read Galatians when you were 49. You would have read Matthew and Mark when you were 50. By the time you were 60, you would have read 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Romans, and Luke. By the time you were 70, you would have read all the rest of the Bible. Then when you were 90, let's say you didn't die till 95, we'll have you living longer than John, which some people did. Let's say you would have to be 95 years old before you read the entire New Testament. This is also very important because we like to leapfrog around and create theologies by jumping from book to book. This is a problem because many of these books were not written yet. You couldn't go to Ephesians to see a concept you put together with Romans because Romans was written before and Ephesians hadn't been written yet. You can't interpret Romans with Ephesians. You can interpret Ephesians with Romans. See, this is the same idea we use with the Old Testament. Everything before is open season to do correctly. When you jump after, you're making subjectifications, you're making assumptions, you're drawing conclusions, and we do that a lot because we don't read this chronologically. And that's what the grid work is about, is understanding something chronologically beginning to end. So that's what I want to do. That's why I went to the book of James. I've already read the book of James. I've marked up my Bible. I found it easier when I look up the talk and look down to kind of know where I was, so I don't get lost. I do get a little tongue-tied at times because I'll forget where I am on the passage. But James, a servant of God, of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes. Now listen, he wasn't written to the church. It was written to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. Now, this is an epistle that is an evangelical epistle that we can learn from. There's still the qualities here, the standards here, you know, how we do things, the practicalities are still very, very good for us. This was written again, probably in the year that he was died. He was murdered. He was taken to the top of the temple and thrown off, and he died, and then they killed him. Well, I mean, he fell to the ground and was not yet dead, and then they killed him. That's how James died. And this is, again, the brother of John. There was a story that we saw in Matthew where his mom asked, you know, can my son sit on your one hand, right hand, and one of the other? He says, that's not my place to say. That's what Jesus said. It's not my place to say. That's for the Father in heaven. We have James, the brother of John, is the first martyr. And, of course, we have John, the brother of James, was the last one to die. He died of old age. Of course, he wasn't really a martyr, but still, he was martyred in the sense that he suffered. According to tradition, he was boiled in water, in hot water. They tried to boil him to death, and that's when they sent him to Patmos. You can imagine this guy wasn't very healthy when he was sent to the 10 mines of Patmos to die as a 90-year-old, and that's where God gave him revelation. So we see that here, that this is sent to the 12 tribes, and again, 12 tribes, there's no lost tribes. There's so much to unpack here that I have a hard time moving forward, because it takes away some of our presumptions and our assumptions and our conclusions. And this is very easy reading, by the way. I don't want to read through every verse of James because it's written layman to layman. This is not, none of these from here on are written by guys who were deep scholars. In fact, when I stop, let me find Revelation. This little bit that we have left to do was not written by deep scholars who sat around for years at the feet of somebody and learned all this high truth, or they went off into the monasteries and really cored it out. They were among the people, and it was written to people. This almost the rest of this, and I know Revelation can be a little bit tricky, but the rest of it's pretty much what it says is what it is, because that's how men talk to men. That's how people talk to people. My brothers, count it all joy when men put you under devised temptations, knowing that this is the trying of your faith works patience. This is what people need to hear when they're under persecution. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect, wanting nothing. If any man lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all men liberally. Let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. Now he goes on later to talk about faith. If you don't get what you ask for, you're usually asking amiss. But if it's something important for the gospel and important for your life, usually it comes through. I mean, you know, you've got to be in tune with what God is doing in your life and what he's trying to do. If he's trying to move you in one direction, but you're trying to force yourself in another, if you're trying to make something happen for you, especially for physical needs, or to get away from crisis, or get away from hardship, it's going to be, you got to find out where he is in the equation and get behind him. You're like the vice president of a company who does what the president says. I work in a grocery store, and my manager said, when I'm not there, you treat the store as if I were. You know, how do you treat things? How do you treat people? How do you treat customers? What are the rules? And I'm him when I'm there. So he goes, if you lack wisdom, ask God that gives liberally and upbraids not. He doesn't say you're stupid. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavering is like the sand, is like the sea, wave of the sea, driven and tossed. Let not that man think that he shall receive anything. I want this. No, wait a minute, I want that. No, ever seen indecisive people? Look at the situation, pray about the options in the equation, and then take those options of the equation to God and see what he thinks. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. He doesn't want us to be on double standard. Doesn't want us to be double-minded. Let the brother of low degree rejoice, but the rich and he that is made low, because the flowers of the grass it shall pass away, for the sun is no sooner rising, and burning heat, and it withers the grass. That's the way it'll be with the rich. We shouldn't have the rich saying that they're better than the poor, or the poor saying the rich are better than us. Exalt in where you are. Blessed is the man that has endured temptation. But when he's tried, he will receive the crown of life. Now, temptation is different than trial. Trial is when I'm training you to do something. Temptation is when someone leaves a $50 bill on the counter. Your job is to put it into the till. If you work at a grocery store or in retail, you see somebody left some money out, you put it in the till or the safe. You don't go, well, that's mine. You know, if you're going to play those games, temptation is different than trial. Trial is, many times It says, don't say that he is tempted by man, because God will not tempt. But men are tempted when there's something that you want and you're tempted because it's there. That's not God bringing that in. A trial is a way of, as a character building way. You know, here's how you do something. A temptation is a shortcut. So if you want to know something is a temptation, it's a shortcut. If something is a trial, it's something that's building your strength and building your faith. Don't, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust. Also, it'll be me tempting me. It won't be God tempting me. And when lust conceives, it brings forth sin. And when that's finished, it brings forth death. For every good gift comes from above, comes from the Father of lights, where there's no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And I'm going to jump a little bit here. That let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. We need to hear that the wrath of man, that I get angry with people, that I get angry. And if I'm going to lash out, that does nothing for God. Can I find a way to be patient and kind? Can I find a way to use self-control? Lay apart all filthiness and superfluous of naughtiness, and receive with the meekness. There's a meekness to this that will happen. And be doers of the word, not just hearers only. This is very interesting. Here's at 44. We have, in a sense, in the church, is I believe in God. I believe. Well, okay, what are you doing? Well, I believe in God and I got salvation. Okay, but what are you doing with your faith? Are you changing your family? Are you changing your finances? Are you changing you? Are you changing how you deal with your relationships at work or with family or with church or whatever? How are you using the word? If any man is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like a person that looks in the glass. He looks at himself, and when he goes away, he doesn't even know what he saw. And he beholdeth himself, he looks into the perfect, but whoever let me slow down. But whoever looks into the perfect law of liberty. Now that's interesting. I thought about that this morning. And continues therein. He is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer. The law of liberty. We'll stop for a moment to say that I have liberty to do things, but I also need to look at what is best for the commandment. He says that if any man be righteous and bridles not his tongue, but deceives his own heart, in his religion in vain. Pure religion is undefiled before God, and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and orphans in their affliction, and keep yourself unspotted from the world. See, a lot of times in modern Christianity, we want to say, well, I can get away with this, I can get away with that. Let me tweak around with the Greek or the Hebrew. You know, if I want to have a tattoo, or if I want to eat shellfish, or if I want to do anything I want to do, I'm going to muscle around. And I'm not saying those things are good or bad. I'm saying that we have a law of liberty. Our first thing to do is to love the Lord. And the second one is to love our neighbors, love ourselves. Then anything under that is free game. But, you know, if you think about it, is it loving the Lord to murder someone? Did Jesus ever do that? I guess that's where I'd go with the law of liberty. The law of liberty can be under, did Jesus ever say it or do it? You know, did he ever murder? No. Okay, don't. Did he ever steal? No, then don't. Did he ever break Sabbath? Well, yeah, because he's the Sabbath, and he explains that. Okay, then we don't have to worry about Sabbatarianism. Did he ever have an adulterous relationship? Well, he wasn't married, but no. Did he ever covet anything? No. Let's go to something like profanity. Did he ever use coarse language? Well, that's not in the Ten Commandments. And it's really only vaguely touched upon in the Old Testament. But did he ever do that? No. Whatever's on the list of what he would do and would not do in the Gospels, based upon that character, that is our square box. That is the box we stay in. Everyone is a servant to something. Either you're a servant to sin or you're a servant to righteousness, but no man is free. You'll either be bound by your lust, or you'll be chosen to be bound as a bondservant to Christ. So that's chapter 1. I hope to do 2 and 3 and then 4 and 5. I don't want to run through this, but also when you read this, it's pretty self-explanatory. So read it. It's pretty simple. It was written man to man. From here on, except for Revelation, things are going to be pretty much man to man, whatever's on the page. You know, I could almost say read chapter 1, read chapter 2. It's man to man. It's not theologian to proselyte. You know, proselyte. Proselyte is the word I'm looking for. It's not elder to greater to lesser, elite to inferior, superior to inferior. It's man to man, man to woman. Read it. God is precise, like we saw in Matthew. He is precise. He said 3 days. He said it'd be this. He said to throw down the temple. He said that they would, you know, it would be destroyed. He said that you're going to deny me 3 times. It was exactly, you know, 3 times for the cock crowed, you know. The precision here, and this is man to man. So read it casually, and what it says is what it says. Thank you.